record it too, so if I don't
You're going to take pictures of me? Is that what you're saying?
maybe.
Oh.
But, when and where were you born?
I was born in Circle, Montana.
Circle?
Mm-hmm. 1925.
1925.
Got the date?
Yeah.
16th. Well, it's the 16th of 1925.
What,
Oh,
what
November.
month was it?
November, okay.
Alright. Then, have you heard any stories about the circumstances of your birth? Like, was that it was at a hospital, or
No,
was that?
it was a home birth. And a doctor came, but he fell asleep on the couch, I guess. And he apparently had been drinking. I mean, this is the story I've been told by my parents over and over. So that's all I
Had been.
really know about it. But it was a home birth, yeah.
And he was drinking, and he.
Yeah, and he laid down on the couch, and my mother and dad said, and then he fell asleep, and
They had the baby without him.
yeah. Well, he did look at the baby then, and then he left, of course. We lived way far out of town,
Yeah.
so
In the country, right?
yeah.
What was your relationship like with your parents?
It was very good,
Very close.
very close. But I at 13 I went to live in town, and after that I only was home weekends. So actually, my relationship with my parents was closer when
you were younger.
I was married.
When you were married.
Yeah. Because I took care of them pretty much. They lived right down where Tony and Linda live right now.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, my mom and dad built that house.
Oh.
Well, they didn't build it.
Yeah.
But see, my brother was killed in the war, and they left a big an insurance policy on, all these. They have insurance policies, all these guys that go to war.
Yeah.
And then that came to my parents, and so that's how they were able to build the house.
What are your earliest memories as a child?
A big turkey charging me.
What was it charging you for?
I don't know, he just, I was trying to get in the door, and he was trying to prevent me, I guess. And he just put his big tail, these were tame turkeys, big tail up like that, and you know how they go?
Yeah. Huh.
And then riding on with my father on horse riding, horseback.
Horseback riding.
'Cause my dad would ride out on the range to check on his cattle, and sometimes he'd take me along.
Okay. Describe your social life in terms of friends and activities.
When?
Probably. Let's say right now.
When I was real.
When you're
younger,
when you're younger, yeah.
It was mostly just neighborhood.
Just hung out with friends in the neighborhood and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the people we met at the Catholic Church. See, it was 11 when I came to Michigan. So, are you asking me, I was born in Montana, and then we came to Michigan.
When you were 11, you came to Michigan?
In 19.
Okay. Tell me about your schooling. What was your school like? What was your school like when you were a kid?
Um, it was all 8 grades, no kindergarten. We had a coal burning fur. It was like a furnace. It was a big village.
It warmed the school or what?
What?
What did it do?
It gave out the heat.
Yeah.
But we had to. The teacher had to fire it up. You know, the teacher had to take care of it and keep the wood in it. The teacher also had to take care of the outbuildings.
What did you like most about school? And what did you like the least? And why?
I really liked everything.
Loved school and you didn't dislike anything?
No, I didn't dislike anything in school. I did, you might know, I did start school and I could only speak German.
Oh, so you gotta learn.
You know, I
English?
learned English in school. And my first memory of that is, of the learning part, the teacher drew a cat on the board and asked what it was. She put C-A-T
Yeah.
under it, but
You said the German name?
I said the German name, Katze.
What'd she say?
Well, she knew that, you know, that I was just little, and teachers always liked me because I guess I was cooperative and bright.
Who were your role models? What did you learn from them?
Well, I think my parents were real, what word should I use? See, they came here from the old country. They came here and they made a good transition and home for us. And what was the question again?
Who were your role models and what did you learn from them?
Well, I don't know. I guess I learned acceptance of whatever happens. You know, acceptance of life's happenings, I guess. You know,
To accept what?
to accept whatever,
Accept whatever happens
yeah,
to happen.
make the best of it.
Make the best of what happens. Of what you have.
Mm-hmm.
As a young adult, how did you feel about where your life was going?
I was very confident in myself because I had gone to live in town with a family. Let me take, and then you can condense it.
Okay, yeah.
But when I was 13, I went to live in town with a family, and because there was no form of transportation to get me to school, and so I'd worked for my room and board, and took care of their little girl, and just came home usually on Saturday afternoon and Sunday. So I was already working.
At a young age, at 13?
Yeah, at 13.
So you lived with another family?
Yeah. In Sparta, see, and my parents were way out in the country.
Closer to school?
Yeah.
Right? And then you took care of...
I took care. They had
Their
one
kids?
child, and they did their housework. You know, a lot of just whatever they had me do. But they were very good to me.
Describe your first job and any career changes during your life.
I think my first job. Well, the very first job I had was, how can I describe that? I worked for a lady who took in summer boarders. You know, they just came for the summer, like if you wanted to go out and live in
In
someplace.
like California or something, then
Yeah, and they would come and,
so like basically like an exchange student, but not from a different country. Is from just across.
no, they were just from, yeah, they were adults.
Oh,
that
they were-
came. They were not children, they were adults. And I helped with the, well, like I set the table and, they didn't have indoor bathrooms, so I had to take care of their,
Clean the bathrooms.
no, they didn't have a bathroom. I had
Oh.
to take care of
Oh,
I had to carry water to their room, because they didn't, you know, and then they had, at night they used a pot. You know, what do they call them, a chamber something, and then I had to empty that in the morning, so that was,
so
but it was helpful.
what was it called?
What was it called?
What was the place that you?
Oh, it was a single lady who had a big house, and she rented it. She took in boarders, I guess you'd say.
So worked at a boarding house.
Yeah.
Worked at a boarding house.
In the country. It was out. It was on 10 Mile Road, so you know, it's that time 10 Mile was really country yet. And there was also, but I could walk home. I got a quarter an hour, 25
Oh, really?
cents. Yeah, that's when I started saving for high school, that early.
And then you just cleaned cleaned.
And help with the kitchen work.
And then what else?
Have you ever been at a bed and breakfast?
Yeah.
That's kind of like it was, you know, the table was set fancy, and
Okay.
and the food was brought into them. I didn't really serve them, but I did the dishes, had to polish the silverware, things like that.
Wow. What other jobs did you have after? What did?
After that, well, all through high school, I pretty much babysat until about the 11th grade. And I was still working in people's homes. Like I would
Still clean there.
still help, you know, helping clean and stuff like that. Help,
Helped others with their housework.
yeah. Well, then when I was when I was a sophomore, I got a job at the Five and Dime store. It's
Really? What grade were you in then?
10th grade. And also at the during that time in high school, I worked for a dairy in their ice cream bar.
Oh, really?
You know, served ice cream to people. That was in Sparta.
You got a job at a 5 cent and 10 cent store.
Yeah, yeah.
Was it called dime store or what was it
Yeah,
called?
dime store.
Dime store. Okay. Anything? Did you have any like main jobs that you had jobs
A big job.
like you did most of your life?
Oh, well, then when I went, this was during the war now, World War II. I worked in a foundry that made piston rings for submarines.
Oh really?
Mm-hmm. And I worked in the lab one summer. And
All the women had to do the jobs like that because all the men were fighting, right?
right. At first I worked in the lab in there for a metallurgist. You know what a metallurgist is?
Metal what?
Metallurgist, guy that tests whoever reads it would know, that tests the hardness and how much, what things go into making a piston ring, and if it was
Solid enough.
solid enough, and if they had to change it or
Just like it was a laboratory that tested the
strength
strength of the metal.
and then the next year they put me in the Rockwell room. I'll tell you what that is.
And then what was
I
that?
went in the Rockwell room the next summer.
So you worked in the lab the first summer?
Yeah.
Then Rockwell.
That's when they they tested. You probably don't know what a Rockwell machine is either. You tested samples from each batch of rings that came back. It's a machine, and you put excuse me. You break they bring you samples of each. I don't know what you'd call it. Each time they bring you samples of piston rings, and you had to test them to make sure. It had a diamond point. Don't write this down. I mean, just so you understand. You test the hardness of the metal, and if it was, and also if there was any air cracks or anything in them. So it was testing the metal in the piston rings.
How was that different from the laboratory?
Because in that we were using a microscope, and you looked through the microscope and you had to see if there was any.
In the Rockwell you did?
Yeah.
You looked through the microscope?
No, and not in the
Rockwell.
Rockwell.
The laboratory you did?
Yeah, you look through a microscope to test the hardness, and then you also. Well, it was different because you tested it. You looked at the microscope for things, like air holes or anything like that, and then the Rockwell machine was to test the hardness. If it was.
Okay. So Rockwell tested the hardness of metal.
Mm-hmm.
And then the laboratory tested the strength of the metal? Or
Yeah.
what? Okay. And then
Then one summer, then another summer I worked, this is during World War II, I worked at the Carnation milk plant.
Carnation.
Milk plant. And they canned milk.
Canned it?
Yeah, cans of milk.
Yeah, really?
Under government supervision for the Army. and they put the milk in, what's the color the Army always used everything?
Green or
So that
So,
you,
like-
kind of that blue, that green tannish
yeah,
gray?
yeah, the army green or whatever they call
Well,
it.
it isn't green, but it,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
a
Well,
lighter.
in cans that were not labeled or anything,
Oh really?
that they sent out to the soldiers then. And I was on the, I don't know what that machine is called anymore. I had to watch that each can was sealed as it went on a rotary,
Yeah,
what would you call that? You
like
know,
a belt,
a
conveyor belt or
rotary-
something.
Yeah, like a, it would go around her.
Yeah,
So I had to watch for, and sometimes it now you'll have to condense this. And
Yeah.
sometimes it would the machine would malfunction or something
wouldn't
would
seal it.
happen, and they wouldn't be. So then I had to solder them by hand.
Oh really?
Yeah.
So
And sometimes sometimes the machine would kind of break down, but they were already coming. So sometimes we had several cases of them.
that you had to
so
solder
then
them all.
I had to solder them all. Yeah.
So let's see how to say this. So the Carnation Milk Plant, they sent out canned milk,
Camouflaged.
canned
Yeah, man.
milk, and
Servicemen.
camouflage. I don't know how to spell camouflage. Camouflage.
Flouge and
Whatever.
Yeah.
Cans. 2 soldiers.
and we had a government inspector on hand to look over all this.
And then you you watched the
This,
what do you call
the
it?
soldering. I
She
guess yeah.
she watched
The belt of the as the milk cake filled in, as the milk was canned, and I had to watch them just make sure that all the tops were soldered.
made sure they were sealed. Any unsealed.
I had to solder by hand. And we had this,
Big
it's a
soldering gun,
handheld.
yeah. But that was a fun job.
Yeah. You know what? All these jobs that I did, there was one aim. I wanted to go to college. And I was determined to go to college somehow. So at this same time, Sparta had a camp of World War prisoners. Actually, right near where I was working. But they had these prisoners working out for farmers. Like a load would come out and they would pick apples for a farmer or whatever it was
The prisoners from
from overseas. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they did. And being young, and then we were not sexually aware of things, but I remember my dad telling me when they came to where he was working, in where we lived, my dad would tell me, stay away from them, because they knew my dad spoke German, see, and they spoke, so they liked to but they were mostly they were nice people, very nice people. They were just like you would go over there and get caught, and some of them were very young. But my dad always told me not to converse with them and to stay away from them.
Yeah.
Well, now later on I realized why he said that. At that time I thought, well, he just
Yeah.
it just never dawned on me at that
Uh-huh.
time. We were so
Young.
uninformed about anything like
Yeah.
that. We just didn't talk about.
What was that? What was that called? They just
Oh, that was called a war camp, prisoner of war camp.
Prisoner. POW, right? That's what the
Prisoner,
abbreviation.
PRISNOR, of war camp. A lot of people, your grandpa might remember those days.
They did work on farms.
Mm-hmm. And orchards especially, because everything was fruit orientated at that time. In fact, my dad, we lived on this farm, and my dad worked for this man who had been a doctor before. But this is just something I'm going to tell you. He was so well liked by the prisoners that he made friends with them, and then after the war, several years, he went over there to visit them.
Really?
Yeah, you know.
Who was that?
That's the landowner.
The landowner?
Or my dad.
So you lived on a farm?
Farm on 10 Mile Road, yeah.
Okay.
And there's 2 houses there, and they lived, the owners, he was a retired doctor.
So they worked on your farm?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it was, this doctor owned the farm, see. Dr. Felt, his name was. He owned the farm. And my dad did a lot of the work, like he did all the milking and
So he's just basically his boss?
yeah. And he worked too, but that's,
So your dad did most of the work around it?
yeah.
Was pretty much in charge of everything?
Yeah, but the actual running of it was,
By the doctor?
yeah, you know how much
Everything.
fruit they should pick and where they should put it, and like now they have these big spraying machines you see in an orchard. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
Okay, in those days, they had a tractor pulled this spray tank, and my dad, the other guy the owner would drive it, but my dad would have to spray by hand each tree, up and down.
Really?
You know, that's the kind of work my dad did. They both worked together, but
He did the harder work.
yeah, and, he did all the milking,
Yeah.
and
Did you go to college?
oh yeah,
What college did you go to?
Western Michigan,
Oh, that's right. All the Uncle Jim's kids went there too, right?
yeah. Well, my sister, Liz, went there also, and see, there's quite a few of them in the family that went there. Jim and Rose and his kids, and Rose went there too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all of those.
And then, what did you do? What did you go to study?
Well, I started in education.
Started to study education.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted to become a teacher?
Elementary, yeah. Elementary teaching. But I soon changed that. I changed that to let's see, first I went for elementary, and then I went for middle school teacher. And then I dropped the teaching part completely and went into social sciences and got a degree in social work.
Social work?
Mm-hmm.
And what was your first job out of college?
Well, actually, you know how they have no, wait a minute. They have teachers training. They send them out to just train.
Yeah.
So at first I worked as a student. What do they call them now?
Like
You know,
Student teachers, I think they call
Yeah.
They call them
Well, I
out.
was a student social worker, but they paid me. The
To
state.
go and like observe the.
Well, I actually did
Oh,
the
you would.
work
Oh, really?
under supervision. Yeah, and
Okay.
that was in my
Yeah, we have a couple of them in my school.
yeah
The student teachers from colleges that come
yeah
and they have to do that in order to graduate to get their
yes.
degree.
You had that. That's what. So I did that in Kalamazoo.
It was at you did it at a
Student.
high school. Was a student teacher
Yeah.
at what high school was
Well,
it?
no. This was this. I was a student teacher. Erase teacher. I was a student. This was my. Well, you know, like the doctors have to go out and work in their field. It's like, in order to get my degree, I had to work at this. It was
Was it a school or?
no, it was a regular office, social for like for poor people and see we had the blind and the very elderly and also the children. Let's see, they were, you know, like no, they were. Somebody would be living, like the women now living with kids, you know, that have. It was family orientated anyway, you know. The family, let's see, what do they call that? Aid to dependent children, I think that's what it was. Some, you know, they didn't have anything, so we would be sent out to the homes.
Like supplies and food and stuff, or
No, to see if they were still eligible. Nowadays, you have to go report back and, you know, you go to an office. But we went to their homes, actually.
to see if they needed help.
Well, to see they were still eligible. I mean, you know, you hear about this nowadays too, where people keep drawing. They might be working and having money, but they're still getting assistance from the government. Well, we had to check all that out if they're and if they had kids that could help them. It used to be that the law was that the children had to help if they were able to.
So that's what you did in order to get your degree or whatever.
Right. I
So
had to,
you helped the. It was a government organization.
well, it's a state. You know, the state of Michigan.
State organization. That
What one? State Department of. Oh, I wish I could remember better. It's been a long time
Yeah.
since I was
yeah.
in my 20s, 67 years, can you believe that? But anyway, the Department of Health and Human Services, that's what I worked for, State Department.
Of Health and Human.
Services, yeah. Like this one couple, they were getting full assistance, and I never forget the woman because her name was Mary, and everybody that had seen her before, I went to their home to see if she was still there, and they always said, in the past, I reviewed what, you know, the record first. I didn't just go in cold. I had to know if they were, why they were there and why they were getting assistance. Well, they said this was a former teacher, but she didn't get out of bed. She stayed in bed all the time. Well, sure enough, when I got there, she was in bed. And I had to see her in person because I didn't know if the husband was just drawing her money from the government, you know. And she said she couldn't work. Anyway, it turned out that she had some kind of disability that she couldn't, it was a mental thing.
Oh, really?
See, and he was taking care of her, and he was getting, that was the money they were getting. But I had to verify that, and after that, they didn't have a savings someplace. You had to verify their eligibility.
You verified that
Yeah.
people were eligible for
Yeah.
government assistance.
And remained eligible.
So what was that? You said verify.
Their eligibility, and that they remained eligible.
And, for government assistance.
Mm-hmm.
Was this during the Great Depression?
No. This was
Was past
this,
it? Wasn't
this
it?
was past the war even. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I worked there for I worked there for a year after I graduated. That same job.
Okay. For 1 year after graduation.
Mm-hmm.
After graduating.
And then because I moved back to Grand Rapids, was because by that time I'd met your grandpa. And there I taught school because there was no opening for a social worker. And
Gotcha.
teachers were very much in demand.
Back then. And so you were in Sparta? Or where were you where was the government?
That was all in Kalamazoo, so this was Kalamazoo, and then I moved back to Grand Rapids. This was all in Kalamazoo.
Oh, because there's Western Missions in Kalamazoo,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's all in Kalamazoo.
Alright. Became a teacher. How long were you a teacher?
Well, I worked 1 year there. At that school. They were all 9 grades.
Do you remember what the name was? What the name of the school was?
Let's see. Here's I know right where it is. It's in the corner of Peach Ridge and 10 Mile.
Is it still? It's still around?
No,
It's not?
they took it down.
Was it a Catholic school or?
No, just a rural school that had 9 grades. And the 9th grade.
Huh.
Did you ever hear the kids say they worked for a Carl Scheidel, Janet's kids, and they'd put in swimming pools?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I taught the guy that runs all of that at one
Oh,
time.
really?
Yeah. Let's see, what was, not Buck School, but that was where my sister, where Paul's sister, Buck. I don't know, it was called a fractional school because Sparta and the other, it was two school districts that both sent their kids there, so that's what they used to call a fractional because it wasn't just one school. I can't think of the name of that school. Well, anyway, I worked there only 1 year. I just taught school at the rural school for 1 year there.
Okay.
And then later I taught another year after, in 1952, I taught school at post school. There's still a post school.
Post, P-O-S-T.
Mm-hmm.
Where was it? That was in Grand Rapids too?
That was over by, it's on a lake. It's by a lake.
Right around here?
You know
somewhere?
where, yeah, where Post, you know where Post Drive is?
Yeah, I'm trying to, is it Pine Island? Or
Yeah.
Little Pine Island Lake or whatever?
In that area, yeah. That,
Over there?
yeah,
In Pine, so still basically in Grand Rapids though, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend that lives over there.
What did you-
And Little Pine Island, I think it's, yeah. Because there's a Little Pine Island,
Yeah,
Big Pine
yeah.
Island, right? Yeah, I think he's got one, or he lives right on Little Pine Island.
And there I taught kindergarten through second grade, kindergarten, first and second. So,
I'm gonna stop this there.
library work.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yes.
You were a librarian?
Librarian. They called me assistant librarian because I didn't have the big degree.
Assistant librarian.
Yeah, and I substituted at any library that needed a librarian. You know, it's like if somebody died or they went on vacation. And then
For-
eventually I worked in their office in the Kent County Library.
And then you worked in the office at.
Mm-hmm. And I worked in the blind and handicapped department for quite a while.
How long were you a librarian?
Oh, a lot of years. I think 10 years. Because I have a pension from that. So I must have had to work
Yeah.
there 10 years. But this was not, it was not full-time. You know, it would be shorter days. I mean, I wasn't a full-time employee, but I worked every day, so. Or if I went out to take somebody's place, I might be at that school, at that library for 2 weeks or more.
Yeah, until they could find a replacement or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then, what did you do after your librarian?
I just worked on the farm.
Oh yeah, because you had farms
By that
still,
time
so.
I was,
Yeah, and then
but I did all kinds of jobs.
just did little jobs on the sides
Yeah,
and stuff.
and I had an egg route for a while. So we
Brought eggs to people.
yeah, but no, by the case, like to bakeries
Oh, so they.
and,
And
to
then they
the
sold
Villa
'em?
Maria down there.
Oh yeah, I think I went
Yeah.
down there and I helped pick up trash for around there.
Did you?
Yeah, with
Well,
my neighbor
they
John
would
Lumber.
order cases of eggs,
Oh yeah.
and I did a variety of things. I worked on the, let's see, what census would that be, 19? When they used to take census, we used to have to go to every single house and see these people. Well, it happened to be in the spring of the year, and the territory, we had a certain territory we had to go see. That part by Comstock Park there that I had was flooded down by the river. And I couldn't get to some of the houses, but you had to see the people. So eventually we were able to get to them, but to verify. Again, this was to be sure these people lived there. They take a census now. Did you know?
Yeah, I don't think they just
But
they just fill something out, right?
Yeah, you just fill something out, and so that isn't nearly as accurate as this was.
Yeah.
Was that 1960?
What would you call that?
A census taker.
Census taker.
Mm-hmm. for the government, for the U.S. government.
For the U.S. government, just basically went to people's houses
Yeah.
and made sure they were.
Yes. And how many people lived in the house, and,
And counted, or recorded,
recorded,
Yeah,
yeah.
recorded number of people.
And it never dawned on me that I'd be living here, but one of the places I had to go was up in the hills back here,
Huh.
So, and then we had to, right there's this house that stood, I guess it still stands. It was right in Comstock Park and must be Grand Rapids. Anyway, the house, because like right here, the next door to this place here, they're working on it now. Part of the way the maps are laid out, part of that driveway over there is in Walker. So when Dunneback owned that for a while, Jack Dunneback.
The one that lived right by the farm there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they had to pay a tax. They just did it as an investment, but they had to pay Walker taxes just on that
The
little
driveway?
piece. And that little piece, yeah, because it was in their land. And then, see, I'm in the last house in Alpine. All these other
you are?
people, yeah,
Everybody else is in Walker?
Walker, over on this side of the road.
Yeah.
But down this way, we're all Alpine. Is that your sister already?
I don't think it. I doubt it. Okay. So you worked on the farm, and then the census, and then that's pretty much what you did the rest of your.
And what?
That's pretty much the rest. What you did the rest.
Yeah, well, I brought up all my children. I worked on,
Yeah.
I was on a lot of committees at school.
Yeah. So I'll say you had 11 children.
Yeah.
So then what else? Were there major changes when you turned any particular age, such as 30 or 40? How did you feel?
I don't know, I pretty much went with the flow all my life. I didn't have any special 30 or 40. Well, I had my last child your dad, when I was 40.
Okay. What historical event affected your life the most? How was your life changed from having to go through that experience?
What was the first part of the sentence?
What historical event affected your life the most?
Probably the Korean War, because my brother was killed in the Korean War.
What was his name?
Max.
Max Walter, right?
Yeah. Max.
2 hours? 2 hours? Or is there 1 hour? For Walter.
2 R's. WALDHERR.
Okay.
And he earned a Purple Heart. He was injured, and then they sent him back on the field, and we don't know how he died. That was the hardest part. We don't know how he died. And it was 5 years before they officially called him dead. They always just said he was missing in action. And we used to watch, they would find some of these soldiers alive, and we used to watch television, and of course, hoping that we'd see that he was one of them, but of course he never was, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What is the most disturbing event in your time? What was the most disturbing event in your time?
Probably 9/11. Yeah, and that's your time too.
Yeah.
It just seems to change our whole lives after that.
Mm-hmm. What inventions or changes had the most impact on you and your life?
In my life,
Yeah.
electricity. We didn't have electricity and any no plumbing.
What have you been the most excited about in terms of changes?
I can't think of any changes that excited me. Let's see.
Having children, or
Yeah, probably.
what is most important in your life now?
My religion.
Looking back at your life, would you change anything?
There were some things I would change, but I don't know how, because I would see that my mother got to go back to her homeland. She was from, that I would, all of my brothers and sisters feel that way too, that my mother could go back to where she was born and lived until she was 24 years old.
Let her mother go back to
Austria.
until age 24, right?
She didn't leave. Is that
Wait, what did you say?
I said she
You wouldn't let her leave?
I would no. I would have liked to have taken her back. She left Austria when she was 24. My mother.
Left. Let her mother left Austria at
Age 24.
age 24.
And she never got to go back, and I would have liked to have.
Wanted to let her, to allow her to go back.
Just for a visit,
Looking back at your life, what is your greatest achievement and what are you most proud of?
My children and grandchildren, that they all, and most of them are college graduates, or have other, let's see. College graduates and that, or other, how would you say that? Like, or other life-changing, other, I mean, they didn't have to go to college, or other achievements that they attained. See, that they went to college or other achievements. Because Diane never went to college, but she's a nurse, And your dad,
Oh yeah, so I didn't know.
and your dad didn't graduate from college, but he did attend at different times.
My dad didn't graduate from college?
From college.
He didn't? Oh, I didn't know that. He never told me that. I'll have to ask him about that.
Well, he went to he took courses, right at high school time even. He was already taking some. But your mother did. Your mother graduated.
So, alright. What advice or words of wisdom could you offer your descendants about life?
Offer me what?
Offer your descendants about life.
Descendants. I gotta think about. Live your life today.
Live your life today.
Here today as if it were the last day, and always remember that you will have to face your maker, I guess you'd say, someday. Too many kids don't ever think about dying, and you have to. There's, today is today, but yesterday you can't change, and tomorrow you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know if you have a tomorrow.
Right. How do you think your past experiences have molded you into the person you are today?
To be self-reliant. And to remember people that are not as fortunate as yourself. And always know that someday you will not, let's see, someday will be your last day, I guess. And what you would, let's see, what did they say? I got to read it. Self-reliant. Remember people who are not as witness. and you will be judged.
Describe your greatest joy during your lifetime.
Greatest what?
Joy.
When my first son was born. Because his dad was an only son. And he wanted a boy to carry on his name.
Why? Because
My
his-
husband, Paul. When they brought him out and said I had a, I just felt such great joy that I was able to give my husband, my new husband,
Mhm.
not new, not a different one, but my husband. I just remember feeling so much joy that I had given him the boy that he wanted, because he'd already named him.
Yeah.
Before we were ever engaged, he said his first child would be Philip, because he had an uncle, his mother's brother, who was a priest, and his name was Philip. And apparently he had a great effect on Paul's life somehow. That was before I had met him, of course.
Mhm. What's your opinion about the state of the world?
It's gone to the dogs, so don't put that down.
It's your opinion.
Huh?
It's your opinion.
I know.
It doesn't matter.
No. Let's see. We're at a time. Don't write this yet. Just let me think. We're at a time when we have to realize that all people are. I don't know how to explain that. Let's see. I guess we're at a point in civilization where where we don't value a person as an individual, and we must somehow recognize that. Because I'm thinking of, Negroes, Mexicans, we're all people, so until we understand that and quit killing each other, not just here, but in, all the places, so.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you want to say about your life or the years you've lived that we haven't talked about? Haven't talked about.
Well, just that. Let's read the question again.
Is there anything else you want to say about your life or the years you've lived that we haven't talked about?
Well, I don't know.
No?
No, I don't think so.
That's fine. I think I wrote some other, like 2 or 3 other questions here. the hardest thing you've gone through, that's kind of like most disturbing event, isn't it? Yeah. Do you have any regrets? Let's see how much.
Have any what?
That was another one. I just wrote these ones down
Okay.
and then. Do you miss your childhood? Do you miss living there?
Only the first 11 years of my life. I was absolutely free, had no worries, didn't worry about the world.
Did you always have good grades in school?
Yes.
Is there anywhere you want to go or wish you have done, or anything you wish you have done?
I don't think so.
Alright. And that's it.
Yeah. I lived a full life and I've done most of everything that I ever. There was what was the last question there when I said none? Anything else? I was just thinking, if I could change anything, it would be that my husband would have stopped smoking, and which caused his ultimate death. So he could be here longer. And see all his grandchildren.
Alright.
Okay.